So it's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm really surprised that many of you are still here. And thank you, Paul, and thank you, Tomek, for the invitation. So although I didn't remember when I first met Tomek, I remember that it was the time when I was working in a lab. So here's my former lab. It's a molecular biology lab. At the time, I worked on the reason why we have Alzheimer's disease. But at the same time, I also attended the Agile Warsaw meetings. And the group here asked me over and over, where are you going there? I said, they talk about cool stuff. They talk about the pair programming, code ownership, TDD, other things. And they have these great tables like Scrum, Kanban. And, fortunately, those guys for Agile Warsaw, they never asked me, why are you here? So, I was coming to the meetings and I was really inspired by you, by the Agile community. And what I introduced to the lab was kind of similar things, like we started a pair pipetting, really great results. I talked about it a few years ago, about shared experiment results and figure-driven publications. And we also adapted some other techniques. But the most important thing that I found in Agile community was an Agile manifesto. And where I was really surprised how you were able to not to destroy what was before, but just saying, we value the things over right side, but we value the things over left side even more. So this concept was really, striking me that you can deal with the past in a very peaceful way. And coming back to the scientific world, we had an issue there. If you're a scientist, there's also a bunch of other scientists working over the world on the same topic. So you try to find an answer to some question faster than they do. So time really matters. It's something you can compare to delivering the product or delivering the code. And what was stopping the scientists who work in Poland was a public procurement law. So in Poland, because we are paid from the taxes, we are obliged to be really transparent when we spend the money. And, there was a long debate over years, this public procurement law is bad, we should do something else. And then I thought, what if we use the Agile manifesto and we transfer it, to the manifesto not against the public procurement law. Let's say we really love this documentation, but we enjoy the scientific freedom even more. And that's why, we can win with the rest of the world because we will have more time to do our research, not to prepare the documentation for the procurement. So we started an action on Facebook, and, we didn't say, change the law. We just said, let us work, because our hands are bound. We cannot work because we are wasting our time on this stupid procurements. And, we got really broad media recognition. I was also invited to the President House, to have a seminar, how we are restricted by this procurement law. And what happened? In a few months, the law was changed, and the threshold was moved from a few thousand euro, when we were obliged to make a procurement, to 200,000 euro. So it was a really big deal for the scientific community. We gained a little bit more freedom to do our research. And, the people from the Agile Warsaw, once I talked to them, they said, you have to talk it to us. You have to give us something back. Come to the Agile by Example conference and tell your story. So I did, and many people came to me after that, and they said, it's cool, but you could do it. You could transfer it to your community because you are used to do experiments. You are used to fail. You are used to, try different things, and that's why you could do it. But in our company, we cannot have these agile things because, and here's the number of the excuses. I mentioned 3, the most popular, And I think Richard also mentioned some of them today, like it's not possible to introduce this idea here because, I'm agile, but my company is not, or my boss is not. At the bottom, we are agile, but at the top, we are not. So this is one of the most popular excuses, and the second one is it's not relevant to me. We cannot apply it in our company because, and there is also a number of reasons or excuses. And then another one is, we've tried to do it, but it doesn't work for us. Maybe it works for Melonian, but it doesn't work for us. And then you can imagine there's 101 other creative excuses. And then, I think it's really a pity that people put so much energy in and use their creativity, to find the excuses instead of finding solutions. So, I will not tell you what to do, how to stay inspired from the conferences. If you should, stand up, lay down, I don't know, but I will tell you what I do to stay inspired from your conferences, your meetings, and from every talk I hear here all around. So let's look at those 3 most popular excuses. The first one, it's not possible to introduce this idea to my company. I was attending these agile meetings and I loved this idea of having a board. And then I tried to talk to my colleagues in the lab and I said, we could have the stand-up meetings and have this cool board. And I said, are you kidding us? So I started with myself. And I don't want to advertise any software, but I started with Trello. So I use it for me. But sometimes I left it on my screen. And, people look at my screen and they ask, what do you have there? Oh, I have these tickets here. I moved them from in progress to done. And here is my backlog. Oh, cool stuff. Is it free? I said, okay, I will show you how to use it. But first, we have to start with the stand-ups. And they did, they joined me, and there are still some people in the lab. Although I left the lab, they are still there, and they are also using Trello. But, I knew there's also more advanced software than Trello, and, it's a little bit more complicated. And another story from my life, I was also a founder of some software company. And we used the Jira, and I really missed this tool. And I said, it would be so cool if we could use Jira, but in a lab, why do you need this? But then I moved to the company that it was a startup, a technical one, where people develop nanoparticles to deliver anti-cancer drugs. And I said, I already have some experience in holding the stand-ups and having a board. So let's try it. And after a while, they asked me, is there any way we can do it electronically? Because sometimes I run experiment and I would like to have it with me and so on. And I said, yeah, there is someone. It's Jira. And I introduced the Jira to the company. They didn't know that actually it doesn't fit. They just trusted me. And from starting small, so from starting Trello, I got an experience. I knew why it works. I knew why it doesn't work. And I think this was already the reason why I was able to introduce Jira. Of course, we didn't use all the features, like a code review or other things, but we used a Confluence at the time. I think it changed the name, but it doesn't matter. We were able to use this software. So let's have a look on another excuse. This concept is not relevant to me. Yesterday after Jamie talk, some people over the coffee, I've heard the conversation. Yeah, it was a cool talk, but she's from LA. They have this Hyperloop thing, How can we deal with it here? So here's another example. In the winter semester, I am teaching a course for the students of physics in entrepreneurship. And one of their homework was to read the article about one of the companies, how they deal with the ideas and what they do. And what they do, they try to kill the idea before they implement it. And because they think if we are able to kill our own idea, certainly the world will do it. So if they are able, they kill the idea. If not, they proceed it. So I recommended to read this article. They did it, and we started a discussion. And I said, so how did you like the article? And they said, of course, there's a Gaussian distribution. Some people don't say anything. Some of them, they just move their shoulders, and some of them said, it was pretty obvious. I said, what was obvious? That you should kill your idea before you implement it. I said, well, do you know some people who work for a living? Of course they know their parents, they know the friends of their parents. And I asked them, so do you know anyone who is killing their idea in work before they introduce something, a product, a service, wherever? And nobody raised their hand. So I asked them, so why do people do it if it's so obvious, But the entrepreneurship course is not about torturing people. That's why we jumped to an exercise, some of you may know. It's a marshmallow challenge, when you have to build as high as possible tower from the spaghetti, and you have 20 pieces of spaghetti, you have some tape. And it's called a marshmallow challenge because at the top of the tower you have to put a marshmallow. And maybe you cannot see it here, but they're students of physics. So first they started to write it down. They counted every angle, or wherever they could. I was really amazed. It's a pity that I don't have a picture of this all calculations they did. And at the end they have to put this marshmallow on the top of the tower. There were 9 groups, and of course, maybe not of course, but many of them put the marshmallow at the end of the exercise, and what happened, the tower just, flipped down, and actually the height of the tower was 0. And I asked them, why didn't you try to kill your idea before, you built your tower? And they said, how could we kill the idea? I said, well, you could put the marshmallow earlier, try, if it stands, build it higher. If it doesn't stand, the tower of 10 centimeters is still higher than 0 centimeters. And, so one of the things I really do is I try to find patterns. And I think also some other lecturers mentioned that actually you are kind of interconnected. So you really have to stay conscious during the lectures. I'm really surprised that so few of you take notes, because I really take notes every lecture because I want to remind myself about the patterns and to see them. So take notes and keep eye on patterns. So this is the solution that works for me. Okay, and the third excuse, it's, we tried this. I even heard this over the break now, but it didn't work for us. But did you really look deep into the process? Have you really dig deep to find the reason? And there's an example. This is a Lindau conference. There's actually meetings for young scientists where the Nobel laureates come and they share their knowledge, wisdom, and they also, of course, say why they succeeded. And some people try to find a pattern. They went to this school, they had this mentor, they were lucky. The pattern of those meetings, he asked many of the Nobel laureates why they think, if they have to choose one single thing, why they succeeded, what would it be? And most of them answered, somebody gave me a bunch of money and then never asked again what I did with the money. So if you really try to find a pattern in this case, you really have to know the constraints. And, another example of the constraint was over the break, I came to Paul and I said, you know, Paul, I have a problem because I wanted to talk about the experiments because this was the only thing that was not said during all of the lectures. But, you know, the Richard at the end of the talk, he said, you know, let's make an experiment. You know, and now I really don't know what to say. And fortunately, and I thought it's a good excuse not to maybe even have the lecture because everything was said. And then Paul said, you know, but there is one thing that Richard didn't say. Didn't you wonder how he is able to have a stand-up meeting with 70 people? Yeah, actually, it's interesting. And Paul said, because, you know, they do not talk about solutions, they talk about the problems. Richard, can you confirm?
Yes, that is true.
Okay. And can you see, if you would like to repeat what they do, it's not, again, about the Viking thing. It's about talking about the problems, not the solutions. So really, if you have time, after the lecture, go to the guy or the woman who already had it and ask why. Even here over the break, I've heard someone ask someone else, do you know the techniques of 5 whys? It's really very powerful technique. So keep asking and keep digging. And this is, I think, the most general advice I can give you. I told you that we value the things on the right side. So, of course, we value solutions more than excuses. But is there any value in an excuse? And if it is, how to find it? So this is another example from the project I joined lately. The question was, Iwona, please advise us how many people we should hire. Because there were many more teams, but to simplify this talk, there was a team 1, and they said, you know, we have too much work, we have to hire a new person. And then I talked to team 2, and they said the same thing. So I started, what's the most time-consuming task? And team A said, you know, entering data to the database. And then team 2 said, entering data to database. But, you know, stop asking us, we just need more people. Don't you understand it? And, you know, I still kept asking why and why. And then I asked the question, what data? And, you know, you can imagine what happened. It turned out that they are entering the same data as those people here. So eventually they are creating a clone of the database. And I asked them, are you aware that you are, you know, creating a clone of the database? Actually, yes. But, you know, we cannot trust the data they put here in the database. So is it really a solution to hire more people if you don't have trust between 2 teams? Will it really solve the problem? So I really encourage you to, you know, keep asking why and dig deep and ask why until you know the answer. And then you will, you know, find the real cause. And once you find the real cause, you will be also able to find a real solution to the real problem. So how to come, because, you know, sometimes it's really nice to find excuses. Like me, you know, I came to Paul and, you know, I had a number of excuses why I should not have this talk today. You know, Mina said something that I wanted to say. Then Victor yesterday told about the constraints. And Richard, he ruined my talk, you know, really awfully. So it was really, you know, like, maybe I will get a relief from standing here, be stressed, and talk to the people from another community who will judge me if I did it correct or not. And, you know, I think there is a way how I was able to find a solution over finding excuses. And here I will use another example. I used to train yoga. And I don't know if you know the lotus pose, but for some people it's really challenging. And once I came to the class and the teacher said, today I will tell you how to master lotus pose. You know, there is a very simple technique. I will tell you how to do it. And at the end, every one of you will be able to do a lotus pose. I said, oh, great. I was thrilled. I was waiting, you know, for an hour to know the technique. You know, because me personally, I could do it, but, you know, I could share this information with other people who couldn't. And then he said, okay, so now comes the technique. You have to try to do it until the day you do it. And I think this is the best thing you can do. So to stay inspired, that really start small, keep eye on patterns, learn about constraints, and learn from the excuses, from your own excuses and from the excuses of others. And really treat every lecture as a lighthouse. It will not direct you to your goal. It will not save you from the storm, but it will help you to orient in the space and to find the right direction to the solution you are looking for. Thank you.